This is the final of a series of videos we made especially for these autumn festivals, Yom Teruah, Yom Kippur, and today we are looking at the Feast of Sukkot. Sukkot is one of three major pilgrimage festivals in Judaism. Or is it? It is both an agricultural festival of thanksgiving and a commemoration of the 40-year period during which the children of Israel wandered in the desert after leaving their slavery in Egypt, living in temporary shelters as they traveled. And I think because of this oversimplified, even uninformed view, most believers have just proverbially chucked out the baby with the bathwater. I think we should go much deeper. Let us begin with modern-day Israel. Sukkot is celebrated, first of all, by building a sukkah. A sukkah is a temporary hut constructed for use during this week-long Jewish festival of Sukkot. It's topped with branches and often well decorated with autumnal harvest or Judaic themes. Jews are required to eat in the sukkah for 8 days. Within Israel it's 7, and some even sleep in the sukkah for the duration of this holiday. The sukkah is decorated and the first day is considered a holy day, a set-apart day in which most forms of work are forbidden. For those who've had the privilege of experiencing this most joyous festival would be able to testify that Sukkot is something that you cannot really explain to somebody. The streaming of people from all over the world into the streets of Jerusalem, the sukkahs, the Jewish people inviting people in to celebrate with them, to eat and drink with them, the streets being paraded by strangers who just come to bless the nation of Israel. It is something to behold. This festival, as a form of culmination on the calendar of Yahweh, is something that I would just highly recommend any believer. But there's more to this actually. And I think as we talk about this 7-day, sometimes called an 8-day festival, let us turn to the scriptures. Now, the Hebrew word sukkah, Strong's number 5521, is a feminine noun which literally translates to a booth, a hut, a shelter, a lair. And this can be traced back to the verbal form. And remember, in Hebrew, whenever you explore a noun, it is always useful to try to dig back to the verb, the action, the truth behind the noun. And in this case, it's the word SUKKAH, Strong's number 5526, and it means to screen, to cover, to hedge, or to fence about. Now, since the word sukkah is a feminine singular, we find that its plural form becomes Sukkot. Normally, plural forms in Hebrew does not get separate entries in Strong's catalog, except the word Sukkot. There's a version 5523, and this is the name of a place, sharing at least the vocalization of the feminine plural word Sukkot, the very name of this fascinating feast, or more correct, appointed time of Yahweh. The first time the place name Sukkot appears in scripture is in Genesis 33 verse 17. And we read, "And Jacob traveled to Sukkot, building himself a house and made shelters for his cattle. Therefore the name of the place is called Sukkot." And here is a fascinating side note. The first destination that the Israelites traveled to, leaving Ramses after the Exodus night, was to Sukkot. Curious. And that we read in Exodus 12 verse 37. And we read about this village town in several places in scriptures, and I do encourage you to search the scriptures and to look this up. And then we turn to Leviticus 23 again, and we're going to read from verse 34. "Speak to the children of Israel, saying, on the 15th day of this 7th new moon is the festival of Sukkot for 7 days unto Yahweh. On the first day is a set-apart gathering, and you do no servile work." Note that, set-apart gathering, no servile work. For 7 days you bring an offering made by fire to Yahweh, and on the 8th day there shall be a set-apart gathering for you, and you shall bring an offering made by fire to Yahweh. It's a closing festival. You do no servile work. These are the appointed times of Yahweh, which you proclaim as set-apart gatherings, to bring an offering made by fire to Yahweh, and a sending offering, and a grain offering, a slaughtering and a drink offering, as commanded for every day. Besides the Sabbaths of Yahweh, and besides your gifts, and besides all your vows, and besides all your voluntary offerings which you give to Yahweh, on the 15th day of the 7th new moon, when you gather in the fruit of the land, celebrate the festival of Yahweh for 7 days. On the 1st day is a rest, and on the 8th day is a rest. And you shall take for yourselves on the 1st day the fruit of good trees, branches of palm trees, twigs of leafy trees, and willows of the stream, and shall rejoice before Yahweh your Elohim for 7 days. There's such a lot going on here, but you can hear there's a lot of detail. There is palm trees, the twigs of leafy trees, the branches, the willows of the stream. There's rejoicing. There's the building of Sukkot, very specifically 7 days of joy. This is an amazing festival. If ever you've experienced this in the land of Israel, you would be able to testify that there is something really special. If you think of this as the final festival and the culmination of Yahweh's appointed times during his calendar, there is something here. Verse 41, and we're almost at the end. And you shall celebrate it as a festival to Yahweh for 7 days in the year, a law forever in your generations. Celebrate it in the 7th new moon. And then, very important, verse 42, dwell in booths, and this is the word Sukkot, for 7 days. All who are native born in Israel dwell in booths, so that your generations know that I made the children of Israel dwell in booths when I brought them out of the land of Mitzrayim. I am Yahweh, your Elohim. Verse 44, thus did Moshe speak of the appointed times of Yahweh to the children of Israel. In a sense, this brings us to the end of the annual calendar of Yahweh, a 7-day joyous festival with an 8th-day Shabbat stitched onto the end. It speaks of various traditions with palm trees and twigs and willows, all sorts of things. Link below that I'm not going to dig into. What I want to speak about is, what can we glean from this most incredible festival? Remember, you must now kind of pull back and look at the timeline of Yahweh's festivals and try to understand that there is a redemptive story unfolding over time. Starting with the Passover, the first fruits, the 7 days of unleavened bread, then the outpouring of the Spirit. Then we get to the 7th month. We have a day of sounding, strange day, a day that you have to wait for the moon. Actually, one of the only days that you need to be in a state of waiting and readiness, because that day you only knew its beginning once you spotted the moon. On all the other days, there was a way to actually just check the moon. Is it quarter? Is it half? Is it second quarter? And that way you could almost, for 4 exact moments in the month, realign with the moon. 10 days into the 7th month, we have the somber, dark, very set-apart day of Yom Kippur. We've asked the question, is it merely about sin atonement, or is there something else? Is there also the idea of God protecting us, as a man protects a woman in marriage, and as Christ protects his body, his assembly? Is there something of that? And I do think there is. And then coming to this culmination of the festivals, or the appointed times of Yahweh on his calendar, we have the 7th month. We have the 15th day, a 7-day festival, actually an 8-day festival, where it's all about the joy of reflecting on a 40-year journey during which the Israelites lived in temporary structures. What can we take from that? On the one end, Sukkot is all about stuff, life, possessions, even people that are temporary. And with people being temporary, I mean that in this earthly existence, our times, our days are marked. We are on earth for a set period of time. Everything is temporary except for God. He's eternal. Except for Yahweh, who is, who was, and who will forever be. He's outside of time. He's without time. We're the problem. We're bound in time. We're stuck in this place. So on the one hand, I want to say Sukkot, living in this temporary branch leafy structure, palm structure for 8 days, eating and drinking and celebrating there is something so beautiful, just reminding ourselves that everything in this world is fragile and it is temporary. The second point that I do think Sukkot is pointing out, and this is, again, now you need to pull back and look at the entire calendar of all of Yahweh's appointed times. Within every year, we need to look at 7 things. And this seventh, this final, this completion of everything is about Messiah returning and coming to live with his people forever. And I want to leave you with this thought. There's a lot of detail. There's a lot of Jewish traditions that are beautiful. And I think all of those traditions have something that we can learn from, and that we can take something and incorporate it into our lives, incorporate it into our future celebration of Sukkot. But what I do think we need to sit with is the fact that we are temporary. Everything is temporary. We are fragile. We're broken. God is the only one that is fixed. God is the only one that is solid ground and that is forever. And then the second point is, we look forward to the day that Messiah will return, that there will be a wedding of the Lamb, and that we will dwell with Yeshua forever. Until next time.